Welcome to the Cosmic Cafe, the companion podcast to thecosmiccircus.com. I'm Brian Kitson, and we have an exciting interview for you today. Dracula, a comedy of terrors, is currently playing at the New World stages in New York City, but only for a few weeks more. I had a chance to not only see the show, but speak with Andrew Keenan Bolger, one of the stars of the play. In this interview, we explore his time in the production, from audition to now, some of the changes and updates to the classic Dracula tale, and also look towards what 2024 may bring him and his career. Enjoy! Hey there, Andrew. Thank you so much for joining us today. First off, I was able to come and see the show. I flew in from Michigan this weekend, and I was able to go to the Saturday show, Dracula, a comedy of terrors, and it was amazing. And I really appreciate the opportunity to come and see it. I just want to start off by asking you if you could just tell me how you kind of got the gig, or like how you started the process, or like what kind of drew you to Dracula.
Sure thing. Well, first of all, thank you for coming and checking us out. So I got involved with this project earlier this year. I'd been a big fan of Steve Rosen and Gordon Greenberg, who are the director
Mhm.
co-writers of Dracula Comedy of Terrors. And I actually got asked to audition for a different show that they were doing in California and wasn't able to make that one work with my schedule. But when this came up, they were like, this part actually was envisioned differently, but we'd love to see what your take on it might be. And so they asked me to come in and audition. Uh, and yeah, ended up booking it. It was like it was a real blessing to come at that time of year. And yeah, and have been doing it ever since.
That's so awesome. Do you know how it was kind of envisioned beforehand and how it changed when you took over the role?
Yeah, I think just physically, I think the character was very different. They've done a couple productions of it prior to it opening in New York, and I think the character was like very tall and lanky. And I think once I got cast, they really played up the sort of size differential
Mhm.
from me and James, who plays Dracula. He is fully a foot taller than me, and so just in a lot of the staging of it, it became like a bit of a kind of sight gag that we would get to play off of. Also, the story evolved to be a bit more queer, which was something that they had been wanting to do, just because the story of Dracula there that is sort of inherent in it. Also, Bram Stoker, the author, while he probably did not have the language for it back then, probably would have identified as queer. He had some letter writing courtships that were sort of discovered after the fact. And there's a lot of just sort of like queer references throughout the book that they wanted to play with. And casting me as an openly gay actor, they're like, this might be a fun opportunity to get to play around with that within the story of Dracula and make it be really a true kind of love triangle between Dracula, myself, and my fiancee Lucy.
Absolutely. I've read it a long time ago, but there's a lot of those queer undertones to the story, and so to see those kind of played up on stage was really awesome. Um,
Yeah.
so can you just kind of give us a rundown of the characters or characters you play? Because you do play quite a few different ones. There's a lot of costume changes and stuff on the stage, which was super cool to see. Um, and obviously the
Sure.
first one kind of being Harker. Uh,
Yeah. I think I play 8 different characters throughout the show. Yeah, my main one is John Harker, who uh, anyone who's familiar with the Dracula sort of lore is the person who first comes and meets Dracula and brings him to England. And yeah, I'm in a love triangle between my fiancee Lucy and Count Dracula, and then I also play like two suitors, the bosun of a ship, a grave digger. Yeah, it's kind of a mile a minute performance. All 5 of the cast members other than Dracula, we all play multiple characters. So we're running off stage, throwing on a hat, coming on as someone different. Uh,
Mhm.
it is an exhausting, but ultimately, I think, really satisfying evening of theater that we get to do every night.
It is, you said fast paced, and even for the audience, 90 minutes it flew by, and the costume changes and the character switches were some of the most exciting parts. I mean, the whole thing was exciting, but when you came out with the two suitors, that audience roared with laughter, and I think that from that moment on, they were 100% sold.
Yeah, it's hard to phone in a performance when you have an audience as engaged as the ones we've had on
Mhm.
Dracula. So it's been just really a nice treat as a performer getting to be in a show that I think is so funny and is so well crafted and um, that audiences seem to be loving.
Absolutely. You have done a lot of different characters across Broadway. When my friend found out I was interviewing you, I think he about died because he's loved you Newsies, and Tug Everlasting, which is one of my favorite novels. And, so you played all these different incredible characters. Have you had a favorite that you played? Is it some, Harker, or is there someone else that you really are drawn to?
Oh man, I think when I really loved just the experience of being in Newsies, and it was
Mhm.
something that I got to be involved in from the very beginning, from the very
Mhm.
first reading of it. And at the time, the character of Crutchy, it was like a pretty small part,
Mhm.
um, and it really was not fleshed out beyond sort of the character in the movie. And I think I was lucky enough that I had a good relationship with the folks at Disney Theatricals. I was currently at the time I was in another one of their shows in Mary Poppins, and I feel like definitely became a big advocate for that character and would try and ask questions throughout the process. And over the course of a bunch of readings, I found that my part got bigger and bigger, um, and that a lot of the attributes that I wanted to bring to him early on kind of ended up getting written into the show. So it was just a really satisfying. By the time that we landed on Broadway, I felt like I took a lot of pride in getting to play him every night and knowing that while I didn't certainly write anything, that knowing that the writers had me in mind the whole time and were sort of crafting it around my strengths and the ideas that I was bringing to the table. It was just incredibly satisfying and um, something that I look on with admiration always.
It sounds like it was a really collaborative approach in developing that character.
Yeah, it was so nice. Anytime that you get to be involved early on in the project, I always think as an actor that is such a gift because you end up bringing a lot of yourself to it. And every night when you step on stage, I think it makes the work a lot less hard to sort of transform yourself if you have been able to show up in the development so that by the time you're walking onto the stage, you can really ultimately be a version of yourself.
For sure. Absolutely. So then how does maybe prepping for some of these other characters that you played compared to prepping for this one in Dracula?
Totally. This is very different. A lot of it is knowing that I was playing multiple characters. I was figuring out how I can really differentiate all of these people so it's not confusing to the audience. A lot of it was like honestly vocal work. It was looking at what kind of accents each of these characters would have. They all have they're all from a different region, which I think was a good starting point. And figuring out how they spoke was a good way of differentiating them and then figuring out their kind of physicality. If this one holds himself up very prim and proper, if this one is sort of hunched over. Um, Figuring out that kind of vocabulary. It's unlike anything I've ever done, and definitely, I think my like bachelor's of fine arts education really came into play in ways that I was really thankful for. Also, I went to Michigan, so fellow Michigander here.
I found that out as I was doing some research, and I was just like, that is super cool to see someone from, the Mitten State make it in doing a successful show. That's, I mean, the show's on TikTok all the time and Instagram, and I've seen it everywhere, and everybody seems to love it. So that's really cool.
Yeah, I have tremendous pride for my home state and for my home city of Detroit. So any chance I can do my state and my hometown proud, I'm always happy.
That's fantastic. You know, that you mentioned about the accents and having, you know, I've known about you for a long time. I follow you on Instagram and stuff like that. And when you came on stage and you had, you had a very British accent, and I was like, did I miss something here? Is, you know, and you did excellent work with every character, did have a very distinct personality and accent. And I think that I was amazed at how, you know, I've seen some other shows and there's not always as the accents don't come as easy, and you did like a fantastic job switching between them.
Oh,
So that
well,
was really
thank you
cool to
so
see.
much. I honestly, accents have never been my strength. It's a class I took in college that I did not excel in. And I think for the show, just because it was being put up pretty quickly, I think I had like 2 hours with our dialects person. But it was a lot of practice and like trying to listen back to myself and be like, that doesn't sound right. Um, yeah, so thank you. That actually means a lot to me because oftentimes, like especially when I'm playing the three suitors,
Hmm.
um, I'm bouncing between three different accents, basically line to line. Um, and I admit I have a couple of times um, said the wrong suitor with the wrong accent, and you're like, oh, well, whoops, that'll happen
It,
sometimes.
it happens. I mean,
Hopefully,
that's
no one
something that,
noticed.
well, if you did it at ours, nobody noticed at all. They were all loving it way too much. So, but that, I'm sure that has to be very challenging, having to switch between accents. I've heard that that's hard, you know, especially in people who are doing shows or, I mean, television shows, they have to stop and reset and stuff. And you just were switching between them within seconds.
Yeah, no stopping on off Broadway. If we mess up, and just keep going.
So for you, what has maybe been like the most like a challenge with the show, or something that you've been really gratifying, that has been gratifying about this experience for you?
Sure. I mean, honestly, I think the most challenging thing is I think energy and the routine of doing a long
Mhm.
run. We started rehearsals for this back in August and we're closing in January. So it's been a fairly long run and we're having to do the same show 8 times a week. And it's a physically demanding show. I sort of thought getting to do a play rather than a musical, I was like really looking forward to it, just thinking that that is going to be easier on my body. But my energy reserves, like I really do have to protect them to make sure that I can get through the show every night. And so that's definitely been a challenge. It's also, I think, especially as we are nearing the end of our run, something that I've been proud of. Like no one in our cast has missed a show yet. We've all like shown up and given it our all every single day um and still I think managed to keep the show fresh and feeling funny and allowing ourselves to try out some new things throughout the
Mhm.
run and making sure that it crackles in the same way that it did when we first opened.
Sure. Has it changed since like you first opened? Like, has there been changes over time?
It's funny, I always have a hard time sort of gauging how different things are because things are so incremental and how you're saying a line or maybe how you're responding to something where it does not feel super different, but I am sure like oftentimes I will see because our stuff goes viral on TikTok all the time and they'll show an old clip from the show and I'm like, oh God, yeah, I guess I did say that line very differently from how I say it now. But I think while you're in it, it's just trying to respond in a natural way, which ultimately it shifts just a tiny bit every single night.
Sure, absolutely. With the show, you know, you get to play two versions of Jonathan. You know, you get to play the nervous, anxious one, and then also the less reserved one towards the end. Do you have a favorite one that you like to play a little bit more than the other?
Yeah, I like playing sexy Harker. It's fun, especially as someone who is I'm a short guy. I'm 5'4". Those are not any kind of personality traits that anyone has ever asked me to bring to a project, being like hyper masculine, kind of like douchey, sexy,
Hmm.
like himbo guy. So I just have a lot of fun, like sort of sending up those kind of attributes. I when I was trying to figure out how I should play him, I actually watched, because it's hard to watch like, it's like, let me think of like the people who are like hyper masculine. And
Hmm.
I was having trouble finding anyone who was like finding references that like totally made sense for that. I ended up finding, I think, my biggest inspiration from watching drag kings, uh, who are women like dressing up as men. And I found that they really perform gender in a way that is really interesting, that can sometimes be funny, sometimes be a critique, and sometimes just be like a realistic impersonation. And I found that they were doing just really funny, like exaggerated, fun things that I may have borrowed a little bit from from some awesome drag kings on YouTube, just watching stuff, and then also watching I watched a lot of videos of like exotic male dancers from like Las Vegas shows, and like picked up some of their moves and just some of their mannerisms. Things that like I don't think any real men actually act like, but it is
Hmm.
sort of filtered through the media lens of like, this is what male masculinity performance looks like. And I try to implement that every night, and while also absolutely poking fun at the ridiculousness of it.
That was one of the awesome parts of the show, is that you had a lot of this commentary, through the lens of the 1800s. And one of them was, using drag and stuff like that, and using this
Mm.
exaggerated, performance of, sexy Harker, as you call them. And it was great. It was fantastic. It was exactly, I think, the callbacks that we needed to be like, yeah, sometimes things are not
Yeah,
always so great.
it has been really fun. We play with gender a ton. A lot of actors are at times playing
Mhm.
gender representations that are different than their own, and it especially with the kind of like stilted Victorian language and just expectations of both men and women at that time. It, when delivered through a woman playing a man, playing a woman, playing a man,
Mhm.
I think the commentary resonates in an even more interesting way that can like really poke fun at some of the ridiculous social norms of the time, some of which still exist today.
Absolutely. And also for your 100th show, you actually had some relatives of Bram Stoker in attendance. What was
Yeah,
that like for you?
yeah, that was wild. So Dacre Stoker, who is, I believe, his great Bram Stoker's great
Mhm.
grandnephew, um, came and checked us out, and he has gone on to be both like a scholar of his great grandfather once removed. I don't,
Yeah.
I can't figure out that genealogy, but has also written, I think like a couple books. One that is like a prequel to Dracula that
Okay.
have been like super well regarded in the literary
Mhm.
world. So it was fascinating to meet him, and he was so effusive in his praise, in that his family just like really loves seeing how creative people have gotten with this story, and that like
Mhm.
comedy is absolutely like a really fun venue, and that his family would have just like loved every
Sure.
moment of this, which was pretty cool.
Absolutely. I know we're getting close to time, but I was just wondering, with the show closing up soon, what's next on your docket? What's 2024 look like for you?
Yeah, I'm lucky enough, I'm going into I'm gonna start another play off Broadway. I don't think it's been announced yet, so
Okay.
I can't say anything.
Sure.
But yeah, I'm doing a play. I think I'm directing my first feature film at the end of 2024, which I'm really excited about. And I have a book coming out that I recently sold. So all of
Congratulations.
them forthcoming. If you follow me on Instagram, I will be quite shameless in letting the world know about all these many things that I'm really looking forward to in the new year.
Of course, as you should. You have a lot to look forward to, and we are all looking forward to seeing where it goes. And as well, I hope that the last couple of weeks in your show, Dracula: Comedy of Terrors, is as exciting as the time I got to enjoy it. So,
Oh, thank you so much.
thank you so much for your time, and I appreciate talking to you.
Of course, yeah, it was my pleasure, Brian. And thank you for coming and checking us out.
Absolutely. Take care.
See ya. Have a good one.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Cosmic Cafe. You can find the companion article for this podcast, along with all the other news for those who like superheroes, science fiction and fantasy films, TV shows, and other media at thecosmiccircus.com. Have a great day!